Good evening, everybody. It's Tuesday, April 28th, and this is The Refinery, where grassroots organizations work to convert conservative messaging into conventional wisdom. From the Conservative Union, I am Leslie Price, joined also by Ryan Bickmore. And from Free Radical Network, we've got J.D. Bryden and Felicia Cravens. And from the Party of Choice, we have Corey and Andy Pate. We are going to, first I want to give you some information about the show, where you can find us and all of that kind of stuff. If you're listening now, you've already found us, so congratulations. We're at therefineryshow.com. That's where you listen live every Thursday at 8:45, Tuesday at 8:45, Tuesday at 8:45 Central. Therefineryshow.com. Watch us live on YouTube and chat live on the website. And if it's not Tuesday at 8:45, then you can watch us later on that website. There are podcasts that you can download. We're also broadcast on Thursday nights from Vigilant Liberty Radio. That's Thursday night. When is that, JD? What time?
It's generally in the evening. It's around 9. It's always, you can always look there in the afternoon for us, afternoon to late evening, for the refinery on VLR.
The Refinery on VLR, vigilantlibertyradio.us, and therefineryshow.com. That's where you'll find all the links to everything. So tonight, Tuesday, it is Bluebell is shut down week 2. And those of us in Texas and generally in the South are having a hard time without our Bluebell ice cream. But we do have word from the Bluebell factory that they are cleaning and retraining, and they're going to be back better than ever. We just don't know how long. It's been really kind of cool that Houston is all rallying around it. Gallery Furniture is one of our big furniture stores, and it's sort of an institution here in Houston. Jim Mackingdale, whom we also call Mattress Mac, is a tremendous philanthropist, and everybody in Houston knows him. He immediately got up and printed up a bunch of yard signs with the Bluebell logo on one side and "Come and Take It" on the other. And people are going to get their yard signs to show their support for Bluebell. It's pretty fun to see a huge city like this rallying behind a big company that is facing some problems, and pledging our support that we'll be there when they open back up. It's just kind of neat to see that a big city can act like a small town too, and that's one of those things that I'm making a big deal of it, and it really isn't a big deal, but it's one of those sort of inspirational, happy moments that just sort of makes me happy, even though I live in a big city that we all kind of act like it's a small town and support each other, which is kind of cool. And now for the big downer. Most of you heard about the massive earthquake in Nepal. Nepal is basically the base of the Himalayas, and I don't know that anybody's all that surprised that there's earthquake activity there, but it was a big one. And as happens when earthquakes or really any kind of natural disaster happens in poverty, the poor are way less able to survive these kinds of things. Our goal would be to bring the entire planet up to a middle-class lifestyle, and that way we'll then have better homes and much less death going on. But that's not the case for Nepal, and so far the death toll is right about 5,000, and we know it's going to be worse because the rubble has not even begun to be sifted through. And there were, people died up on Mount Everest, and that was, wealthy mountain climbers and the Sherpas who work with them got buried in avalanches there. But there was a United Nations World Heritage Site tower, like a 300-foot tall tower in the middle of Kathmandu. And it was the kind of thing that tourists go up in and go out and look around up at the top of the tower. And it was the middle of the day on a Saturday, and that thing is completely gone, and it's rubble now. So I'm quite certain that there were tourists in that thing that are now dead. And getting to the victims, getting to the bodies, getting food to the survivors, getting blankets, it's a huge thing. And the government of Nepal has never been stable. They change governments about every 2 years, and it's not no longer a monarchy, but it sort of leans towards communism. And Nepal being in between India and China, there's the constant tension in that country between China and India wanting to pull them over to their side government-wise. So there's really not a whole lot of government stability and not a whole lot of resources that Nepal can really count on. And they're very fortunate that China has done a lot more in supporting Nepal than they've done for any other countries with major disasters. So China is stepping up. But the big story is India is stepping up in a huge way. Flying helicopters and flying in rescue things. We're sending people, of course, as well, and so are most of the Western nations. But India, this being right on their northeastern border, India is really doing yeoman's work in helping the folks of Nepal. And, this is right after India saved our people's butts by helping them get out of Yemen. India is, while we've not been paying attention, India has really stepped forward on the world stage as a huge democracy, and their Prime Minister, Modi, is doing a great job of making India a responsible global citizen, and I'm thrilled to see it because India, as far as global allies of ours, is really one of the best friends to have. So seeing them step forth in Nepal is really a great thing. And there are, as we all are used to when tragedies happen, there are tons of charities that spring up overnight asking you to donate, and most of the ones that spring up overnight are scams. So you have to, your donations are needed, but they need to go in the right place. And the best place to go is Charity Navigator. We'll put a link to that in the chat and stuff. The Charity Navigator has a Donate to Nepal site where they've collected the charities that are working on Nepal, and they've got the star ratings for them so that you can see, is Samaritan's Purse a good thing to go to? Is Catholic Charities a good thing to give my money to? What about the International Red Cross? Not the American Red Cross, the International Red Cross. The different charities that you can donate your money to, and some of them are going to have lists maybe of the things that they need. So we will put that in for, I'll work on those links. But prayers for the people in Nepal, but also send money because they're gonna need it. So that's the, I don't know, that's the news of the day, which is kind of a downer, but that's, I don't like to talk too much about current events because there's not really any conservative messaging angle on it, but not recognizing that something like that happens. The conservative messaging angle on it is get involved, donate money, donate your time, do what you can to help, and we will provide those links to you. And now getting to some actual conservative messaging type of things, we all know that there are huge goings on in the realm of gay marriage. In fact, today was arguments at the Supreme Court about whatever the case is, I can't keep the names of cases straight, determining whether the Supreme Court is going to make a mandate that all states have to recognize same-sex marriage or not. And we know that recently there was the Oregon ruling that Sweet Cakes Bakery, who in 2011 or 2012 declined the opportunity to bake a gay wedding cake for some customers. They then there was a complaint in the civil rights group in Oregon, because Oregon has a civil rights ruling. It's not a national thing, it's a statewide thing. But Oregon it's not a final, but there was a recommendation that Sweet Cakes Bakery pay $133,000 in damages. And those are all emotional damages. They aren't material damages at all. So that's a case where a bakery, they're completely out of business already. There's the people who once owned this bakery are being told they may have to pay $133,000 fine, and then a GoFundMe account was sprang up so that people could donate money to cover that cost for them, and then the GoFundMe company decided to shut that down because GoFundMe has a policy against letting people have accounts to collect money when they are under indictment for discrimination or whatever their rules are. So GoFundMe can choose who their customers are, but Sweet Cakes Bakery can't, apparently. So there's that. But then over in Kentucky, there was a recent ruling that in 2012, 2012, there was a T-shirt company in Kentucky that was asked to print T-shirts for Gay Pride Parade, and they turned down the opportunity to do that and sent the company to another T-shirt printing company. And this T-shirt printing company then got sued for discrimination because they had refused to print T-shirts for Gay Pride Parade. And so it was a similar deal that the gay lobby was claiming discrimination and suing a company for refusing to do business with them. And then in that case, though, the judge in Kentucky ruled that this T-shirt company absolutely had the right to decline to print T-shirts for the Gay Pride Parade. So we have a situation where rulings are coming up on both sides of the aisle on all of these kinds of cases. And what I thought was interesting and worth thinking about and talking about was an article in the Daily Signal about, I think it was it Daily Signal or was it, hold on, not Daily Signal, that was Daily Signal was where the article was about the Nepal, sorry. The Federalist, another excellent website that you all should be reading. The Federalist had an article recommending that we bring back the distinction between public and private. And because so many of the arguments about these bakeries and whether they can refuse service to somebody hinge on the understanding that they are a place of public accommodation, and that there's some thinking that if you're a place of public accommodation, you're not allowed to turn away service, or that by declining service to someone you're being discriminatory. And it's a private business, but there's a mishmash between private business and public accommodation, and we kind of need to refine that so that we can frame our arguments better. I thought it was really interesting, but then Corey and Andy have some warnings for us about that one. I don't really know. They just briefly mentioned. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I like his basic point, and my only concern is, at one point he said he uses the example of a hotel along the side of the road, and he says that hotel, for instance, cannot say we will not serve black people because, and this is a quote, doing so would unduly restrain the right to travel. Well, my question is,
and I took that to mean back in the olden days when there was only one inn on the road between Baltimore and New York City.
It did.
These days it wouldn't.
It did, and that's exactly the problem. Because, okay, what does that mean? So if there are more inns, then I can say no black people? Or what if I have a place that doesn't provide a service that affects the right to travel? What if I sell ice cream cones? Could I say no, I won't sell them to black people? I think, so I'm not saying he has a bad, I like the separation of public and private. My concern is I just need clarification. Will that get us in hot water by saying I can refuse service to anybody I want and discriminate for any reason? If I can do that, that opens the door to racism. And look, just talking the messaging here, we can't sell that. First of all, I don't want to discriminate based on race anyway. But secondly, I can't sell something that would allow for that. Whereas the religious argument, I see what he means. It is weakened, right? Because you're saying it's according to religious conscience, which is subjective and hard to prove, right? But at least religious conscience divides between things like race and sexual practice. So it clears you of the connection between gay and black, gay and Hispanic. So using the religious argument clears you of that connection, whereas I'm not sure his does. I just need clarification.
Well, and I'm concerned about using the religious argument, because that means that you're not, because my contention is that I should be able to decline to participate in your event, whether I'm religious or not. I shouldn't have to use religion as my reason to not participate in your gay wedding or Ku Klux Klan thing or whatever it is that you want me to make a cake for or print a T-shirt for or whatever, I should have that right as a private business to not sponsor your business by providing you with my product for it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. But all I'm saying is, by taking away by replacing it, by wiping it off the board. See, I'm not saying that the religious argument should be the only one allowed. I also would allow for what you just said. But if you erase the religious argument, first of all, you're not protecting people of faith, which I kind of think we need to do. But more importantly, I think then you're in the position of, okay, by what rationale can you refuse service? Because clearly, if we're talking about messaging, there are rationales that will not be accepted. For instance, race. That simply won't be accepted under any circumstances. So at that point, you have to say, okay, Leslie, why do you have a problem participating in this gay event, but you wouldn't have problems catering a black wedding? You see, and
that's where we end up caught with the fact that there was that one public accommodation section in the civil rights legislation back in the mid-'60s, and that really never, in a way, it never should have taken place, because all of the civil rights legislation should have been about what the government is not allowed to do. And
because that was my thought. I was like, when I first saw the public versus private, I was like, okay, that makes sense. If you have a public park or a public service, something that is provided by tax dollars, then no, you shouldn't be able to discriminate against someone, because you're collecting tax dollars from people of all backgrounds and beliefs, right?
Exactly.
So you accommodate all backgrounds and beliefs.
Exactly. It's what the Constitution restricts what the government can and cannot do. It doesn't restrict what private individuals can and cannot do. And whether they're doing it under the guise of a business or not, that's their own deal.
But I
don't give up my rights just because I'm a business.
But I would argue that you can discriminate against Democrats since they don't pay taxes.
Right.
That's just my reasoning there.
Right.
Well,
I thought that was only MSNBC employees that don't pay taxes.
And the IRS.
Well, true.
Right.
And the trick is that having any kind of argument about the civil rights legislation is pointless, waste of time, and doesn't get you anywhere, and actually gets you worse than nowhere, because you're fighting a battle that was lost 50 years ago.
I thought Rubio made a good point.
In what?
Well, Rubio, what he did is he simply divided between individual and event.
And that's where we need to help people understand. Mm-hmm. With the cakes thing and with the T-shirt thing, it wasn't that I won't serve you because you're gay. It's that I don't want to sponsor this event. I don't care whether you're gay or straight. I wouldn't sell it to a straight person. I wouldn't sell these T-shirts to a gay person. I wouldn't sell these T-shirts to any person, because I'm not going to make these T-shirts.
Yes, and at that point, what he's saying is you cannot refuse service to any individual, but you can refuse to embrace an event, with your business. And
this is simply a product I do not make. I do not make gay wedding cakes.
Well, and I just wonder, too, if we could frame it from a perspective of, along with the event versus the individual, but looking at the activity. For instance, I used to work at a children's consignment store on the weekends. It was kind of a hobby job, and we would have parents come in whose children would just rip the store apart. Well, okay, so if they're being disruptive and they're damaging our merchandise, shouldn't I, as a business, be allowed to say, I'm sorry, but you need to leave? You're damaging our goods. You're damaging our business. I don't approve of your behavior. Well, couldn't you say the same thing with an event like a wedding, especially like if a gay wedding, they don't approve of the activity?
Corey actually wanted the death penalty when kids did that, but I thought that was a little strict.
Well, you had to be there.
Well, I think it's totally justified.
But here's my concern if we do the event thing. And while I think Rubio has a good line of reasoning, and I think it'll hold certainly in public opinion, once again, okay, well, what about an event that's a black wedding, 2 black people? Are you opening the door? No, nobody would do that. Nobody would. It's not going to happen. It's a ridiculous hypothetical, but you build laws on these hypotheticals. could you then say, by that reasoning, you could refuse to cater a black wedding?
And my answer is yes, they could. And yes, they must be allowed to. And we must also be allowed to criticize them for it and shun them for it. But that's not an argument that can be made.
No, it's not a bad one. That's a libertarian argument. That's actually pretty right of association. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
it's a right of association argument, but try and make that play. You're not going to be able to do it because as just what you said, the Civil Rights Act, it's on the books right now, and we're not changing that. That's not going away anytime ever. It is what it is, and it was very important. And it's not something that we can disagree with without incurring severe penalties.
So I shouldn't say that while holding a torch, per se, or anything like that. I just think the whole line of reasoning is rather. It's tough. The left.
I just don't know how to message it. I don't know how to help people understand.
Well, I think first of all, hats off to the left. They have attached a behavior to a condition, being born with darker skin color of all things, and taken America's history of bias against people of various skin colors and attached it to a behavior today. Brilliant, well done.
And it is, and they've advanced it from just attaching it to a behavior to attaching it to an event.
Yeah.
It's not just that I can't discriminate against black people and I can't discriminate against gay people. I can't discriminate against someone having a gay wedding. I have to support and attend and sponsor and put my brand name product at that event.
Well, one thing that I've been doing lately that does seem to at least get people to think it through is I kind of flip the argument a little bit. And so what I say is, okay, so let's say, I'm okay with gay marriage. If you want to get married, that's fine. However, my church doesn't agree with it, doesn't want to perform the ceremonies. Let's say there's 4 churches in our city, and one of them decides, no, we're not okay with performing a gay marriage ceremony. The other 3 say, hey, we're okay with it, come on in. You have a couple that are gay that want to get married. They know that there are 4 churches in town, but they target the one that simply disagrees with them. They don't hate them. They just disagree and don't want to perform the ceremony. Why are they targeting that one church? Why are they targeting that Christian bakery? Is it really about them wanting to get married and having marital privileges, or is it about harming and punishing those who disagree with them?
Well, the article goes into the idea of the public accommodation being an exception in all of the cases that they were talking about. The idea of, for instance, not being able to discriminate as a hotel owner because it's public accommodation, you interfere with people's right to travel. And I don't know if the left will ever admit it, but they are absolutely targeting businesses when they could go down the block. And that is, yet another tactic to look out for in their long march for social change. Is they pick the targets carefully without regard to what other accommodation they can have made. And you're exactly right. These things are, they are systematically doing this in order to make that very point, in order to put any kind of objection publicly made, whether it's in the church realm or in the professional realm and business realm, against gay marriage, etc., out of bounds and completely casting it as evil.
Right. And it's, we don't hear much in public about the T-shirt printing organization in Kentucky and their refusal to print the T-shirts for the Gay Pride Parade, and that's because the gay lobby lost that one. But we hear about the ones where the gay lobby wins, and they do venue shop. You notice they don't target any of the Muslim bakeries that Steven Crowder went to. They don't target those. They target the florist shop of the lady who's she's taken care of me and provided my flowers for years, but she refused to do flowers for my gay wedding. Okay, I'm going to sue her. They target the cake place, and well, and scarier still, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and this is I guess it's a city regulation about discrimination. In Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, there's a church that refused to perform a gay wedding ceremony, and now the pastor of that church is in danger of going to jail because the pastor refuses to perform a gay wedding ceremony. And it's a city law. And because of the principle of federalism, I have to support states and cities having those laws. Because I want a state and city to be able to make whatever crazy cakes law they want to make and encourage people to just move the hell away.
No, because then
the supremacy clause would overrule that. That's not, you can't do that. That violates the constitutional right of that guy, right, to uphold his freedom of religion, of that church to uphold their freedom of religion. That violates the supremacy clause.
Which is exactly why it's in front of the Supreme Court, because they want to make a blanket law that eliminates the opportunity for states to do things like that, because they will see so many cases from the way that laws are written from place to place to place. It makes perfect sense to me there. I guess the thing, too, about this that is, it's so problematic is you have all of these churches in these places where they build these laws or whatever, and then they move out, and then you have an unserved population. The other solution that someone recommended is that all pastors of all churches should just make a statement that they are unwilling to marry people that are not members of the congregation, and everything that entails. So I don't know if that's an out, but it is a strategy someone's proposed.
One thing that I've been using that has actually worked pretty well on this whole topic is this line of reasoning. I put them on defense for going after Christians. And what I mean is this. I say, look, number one, in a free society, you're going to have people whose views and lifestyles and choices conflict. Okay. Number two, in this case, you have, one person has a lifestyle and another person has a religious belief, and those two conflict. Okay. So here's my question. I hear you providing every protection you can, extending every protection you can to the person of the lifestyle, whether it's a choice or born into. Okay, it still conflicts with this other person's religious beliefs. What I don't hear is any protection for the person of the religious beliefs. So my question is, what protections are you offering to people of religious beliefs when they are not going out of their way, when they are not an aggressive force, they are not aggressively going after or harming the people they disagree with? So what protection will you offer them to be able to, as long as they're not aggressively seeking out and going after and harming people, to maintain their conscience and not participate in things that violate their religious beliefs? And when I do that, obviously they don't care. They hate Christians. That's the reason they're doing that. My goal is to expose that, and they don't have a good answer to that is not hateful toward Christians.
Well, and this is where it gets looped back into the public versus private thing. The argument that I have seen repeatedly is they are in a business to serve the public, and they have to accept all that entails. They have a public place of business. They have to serve the public.
Yes, but two big problems with that. Number one, you are not holding other businesses to that standard. You're not saying that a gay bakery has to produce cakes that say, Jesus hates homosexuals. Which, by the way,
not now, but that'll be my next step.
No.
We need to attack this on the.
Colorado. That happened here in
Stick to the issue. Stick to the issue today. I'm taking their side of the argument. Stick to the issue today. They have opened up a public business, and they are obligated to provide service to the public.
It is the issue today because that was tested here in Colorado, in the same state where a Christian bakery was forced to provide for a gay wedding. So a Christian minister, being facetious. Go ahead, honey.
Actually, that's not exactly what the cake said. His story is different than what the news said. The news said that he went to this gay bakery and said that he wanted a cake that said God hates gays. He says that he went in and he asked for a Bible-shaped cake with Bible verses on it, and I believe they did speak against homosexuality. So, in that case, the gay bakery was not required to accommodate the Christian.
Right, and so, yes, it is absolutely an issue today, right now, here, now, absolutely today.
What was the reason that the gay bakery didn't have to accommodate the Christian? Was there any kind of consistent logic there?
No, none. Wasn't. It was absolutely because it's offensive.
Because they're wrong. Because Christians are wrong, and homosexuality is great and fine and everything and awesome, and we're the good guys. You're the bad guys. And get over it, because you need to get over it, and it's 2015. Get over it.
How the hell do we get out of that? I mean, oh my God.
Out on their hypocrisy. You have to say, okay, look, you had two bakeries side by side. One's owned by a Christian, one isn't. Why did you target the one with the Christians? And then when they politely refused and said no thank you, why did you sue them?
And then when there are cases where you have a gay bakery being asked to do cakes that go against their beliefs, that is okayed, and a Christian bakery, their rights are taken away. Please explain to me how that is not biased. Please explain to me how that is fair. There's no way you can.
Well, and the gay bakery isn't even
hang on. The general public will not go for it when it's put that way. The reaction to the two women who said they felt mentally raped by not having this cake baked for them, went over like a lead balloon. Let's be very clear that when you're targeting people that are not the institutional left, this does move people.
It absolutely does, because I cannot tell you how many people on all sides of the aisle, all spectrums, because I talk about this issue a lot because it's a huge issue in Colorado right now, they all stop and they think about it, and they think, okay, I see your point. I see your point. If there's 4 churches, 3 of them are okay with it, 1 isn't, you're right. That one should not be targeted. That's not fair.
And somebody needs to make a video on that.
After I'm done with this acquisition, okay?
One last thing I would advise for Christians, though, to keep in mind. What we're going over right now are a lot of good messaging techniques from everybody here. There's been several that show how to use this topic to put them on defense and make them look bad for their bias. And I think we've done that. You're right, Fishy. It's not selling. And that's great.
And anytime we can make the left look bad and feel bad about themselves, it's a win.
Yeah, it's a win.
That's me being evil.
Let's keep in mind, folks, don't help them. When we seek to make our Christian beliefs into other people's laws, how do we defend that? Okay? And so what I say is, folks, do not try to restrain the choices of others if those choices do not violate yours. When you do restrain the choices of others, even when theirs do not violate yours, you are hurting yourself. You are empowering them. You are taking away all of your ability to protect yourself. That's what you're doing. And I just would want to caution Christians on that. Look, I'm a born-again right-wing evangelical Christian. Okay? I believe marriage is between one man and one really super hot woman. That's my belief.
Well, that's because you got yours, yeah.
I got mine, and I really don't care about the rest of humanity. But I don't want my beliefs to be other people's laws. The moment I do, then I have no right to keep them from inflicting theirs on me. And I'm just telling Christians, look, you're not hurting yourself by being consistent. You're helping yourself and damaging them. That was my last point on that.
I love it. I started speaking and apparently my mouse double clicked. I think that's a very good point. And I think this is a good discussion to have, an interesting one to have. Um, yeah, it's a topic that we're obviously going to be talking about a whole lot more of on in the future. I mean, when the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and
go ahead.
it's not as much about gay marriage and what any of us thinks about gay marriage, because it doesn't matter what any of us think or feel or believe about gay marriage. That's totally irrelevant.
I don't think a single person here in this discussion has any real problem with gay marriage to some extent. You know, I mean, I think that there's a pretty big, states shouldn't be in it. I don't want to misrepresent anybody's position, but I'm fairly certain that nobody's got an axe to grind saying that gay people shouldn't be allowed to get married or whatever, have a civil contract in this group. So
well, and the thing is, it's about rights and permissions and what we're allowed to do,
and it's about people's personal rights.
And when we get involved in discussing our own personal beliefs about marriage, that distracts from the core issue and leads us into discussions that aren't even pertinent or relevant or helpful on the conservative side with helping us figure out what our messaging is. I mean, because it's about how do we frame the argument to help the public understand, because the public just hears about, well, they hear the leftist argument. And how do we make our arguments not sound like it's hate? Because what I get is anytime I'm trying to discuss that a company should have the opportunity, should have permission, and asking for permission just bugs the crap out of me. The company, if I open a business, I must be free to turn people away and to turn away business for any reason. And you must be free to tell all of your friends that I'm a horrible person for doing so. And that's the way freedom works. The government must have no say in the matter, because if the government has some say in the matter, then it's coercion from the government for us to have a relationship, and that's not freedom at all. I'm either forced to do business with you or you're forced to be my customer, and that isn't a free exchange or the free market in any way, shape, or form. And people don't understand it that way. What I hear is, well, I just don't understand how it can be about anything other than hate, and that business person is just full of hate, and it's all just hate. And they genuinely don't see how it can be about anything other than hate. They get wrapped up in the idea of gay marriage rather than the idea of freedom to choose who you do business with. And that's where I think maybe that t-shirt company story is useful, because most people understand that a t-shirt company is going to get requests to make t-shirts that are designs that they object to all the time. And they're going to turn down those designs all the time. They turned down the opportunity to do a design for Gay Pride Parade. They also turned down the opportunity to do designs for the KKK Parade. And both of those business rejections are perfectly legitimate and perfectly legal. And, oh, I see what you're saying. And that gets us maybe beyond the, well, you just didn't want to make a cake for a gay wedding because you hate gay weddings because you hate gay people. And you're a religious Bible beater or Bible thumper. Sorry. I don't know, whatever.
Yes, Bible beater. That's
just wrong. As long as it's not a Quran, we're okay.
Yeah. Let's not go there. I just want to clarify that. I want to say it's certainly not a top issue. Gay marriage is not a top issue among anybody here. Really, it's not something that we're on. That's number one on our list.
No, but a pastor going to jail for refusing to do something and churches being required to pay for abortions for their employees and those kinds of freedom incursions are top issues.
Absolutely. And back to the concept of hate and stuff. I think that now's a pretty good time to transition into another sort of awful meme about conservatives. One is that we, for some reason, hate gays or whatever. We just actually care about religious rights and all of that stuff, and people, being able to stand up for their beliefs. Another thing that's out there that's really annoying and wrong is that conservatives are all rich and that conservatives hate poor people or don't want to help poor people. And Ryan actually, in his debut article for Free Radical Network, so congratulations on being a part of the being part of the roster there, Ryan. He wrote about that in his article. So I would love to hear some more about it there, Ryan.
Okay, so often when I'm discussing with people, the topic comes up, oh, you're conservative.
Introduce the name of your article.
Sorry, it's called For the Poor. The idea behind it comes from having discussions with people where they say, oh, you're conservative, you don't care about the poor. You're a Republican, you only like the rich people. You just want the rich to succeed. You don't care about anyone else. You don't want to help the poor. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I hold conservative positions because I want the poor to be able to get out of that poverty. I want less poor people, those that are there. I want to give the skills and knowledge and opportunity to get out. I want to create a culture where people don't get into that situation in the first place. So I wrote a few points of examples. I want the poor to be better off, and that's why I encourage and support traditional families. When you look at statistics, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, children in father-absent homes are almost 4 times more likely to be poor. In 2011, 12% of children in married couple families were living in poverty, compared to 44% of children in mother-only families. Children who come from single or fatherless households have far higher rates of incarceration. They have far higher risk of abuse and neglect when there's not a biological father in the home. Sometimes that could be from a boyfriend of a mother or something like that, or even a stepdad. 63% of suicides nationwide are from individuals from single-parent families. 75% of children in chemical dependency hospitals are from single-parent families. So, as you can see, having a biological mother and a father makes a huge difference on whether those children are in poverty or not. And that's one of the main reasons that I support nuclear families, keeping the mother and father in a home. Whatever we need to do to make that culturally better, to lower the divorce rate, to encourage, if there's tax benefits, whatever we can do to help that. But it's clear from looking at Democrat-controlled cities such as Detroit, D.C., Chicago, Baltimore, that the Democrat plans for the past 50 years have not worked on poverty, on having 2 parents in the home, on education, things like that. Another thing is I want to help the poor people move up the economic ladder, and that's why I care about welfare reform. As I just mentioned, all those Democrat cities, what they've been trying hasn't been working. People are not getting out of poverty. There's more and more and more people in poverty each year. Food stamps are rising, welfare is rising, dropout rates are not good. Benjamin Franklin said, "I'm for doing good to the poor, but I think the best way of doing good to the poor is not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it." I observed that the more public provisions were made for the poor, the less they provided for themselves, and of course became poorer. And on the contrary, the less was done for them, the more they did for themselves, and became richer. I listened to a podcast the other day from the Cato Foundation, and it talks about, it was a founder of a company called the Doe Foundation. They have a 9 to 12 month program, and they take homeless people and ex-convicts and ex-addicts. What they do is they have a homeless shelter, and they put those people in the shelter. Immediately when you become part of the program, you have to stop all welfare and public benefits, and you have to pay your child support. Those are their two main conditions. They have biweekly surprise random drug tests, and they immediately put the people to work earning $8 to $10 an hour. They're provided with the shelter and then 3 meals a day. And they work 30 hours a week full time doing things like cleaning the streets of New York City. And then when they're done with their days, they go and do job vocational training. They'll learn interview skills, they'll learn communication skills, they'll learn problem solving, they will learn how to properly handle disagreements, they'll learn computers, things like that, so that at the end of the 9 to 12 month program, they have the necessary skills to get a job. They have financial training and they know how to handle their finances. They are drug free and they have a work history. And their recidivism rate is extremely low. 60 to, I think it was 60% don't come back or don't go back into jail or on drugs. Somewhere between 60 and 70%. So that is one example of capitalism, free market enterprise stepping in and doing the job, and it's working really, really well. I think we need to reform our welfare system to something more along those lines, probably encourage private companies and private people to come in and do it and get the government out of it as much as possible. Another reason I care about the poor, and that's why I support capitalism. I'm not going to go into that, but there have been dozens and dozens of studies showing that capitalism has by far been the best thing ever to happen to poverty in human history. Nothing has come anywhere close to lifting the amount of people out of poverty. Quick Google search will pull up literally dozens of different studies and articles proving that. So I don't need to really go into that. And I care about the poor, so I support school choice. Parents should be able to choose where to send their children to school. Right now, there's a lot of parents that will choose what neighborhood to live in based on the public schools or the schools in that area. They say, well, our school right now is bad. We have enough money. Let's move to a different area so we can put our kid in a good school. But poor people don't have that choice. They don't have the opportunity to pick up and move to a different neighborhood or to pay through the nose to put their kid in a private school. We need to let them choose. We need to let schools compete. We need to give them options between charter schools, private schools, public schools, different public schools, whatever we need to do. But public schools are failing. Charter schools are far better. Private schools are far better. Minorities perform much better in private schools. All the elites go to private schools. We need to have school choice so that they have the opportunity. So I just wanted to kind of, in this article, give a few examples of next time, like when someone tells me that I hate the poor because of my political position, I can tell them, actually, it's the opposite. I've chose these positions because they work and because I do care about the poor and I want to help them get out of the poverty that they're in. So I hope this kind of encourages some thought and discussion, and all of you can come up with your own ideas of why, when someone asks you that, why you can say, no, I'm actually conservative because, so let's hear what you guys have to say.
Well, first, I just, oh, darn it, I hate it when that happens. I shut off the lights because they hurt my eyes. Anyway, I think it's a really good and informative article and something that does, as you said, get people thinking about this issue. And it's something that when you have those discussions with people, and these are things that we do need to have, in setting up future elections and trying to get people on the same page with us politically. To have these kind of nuggets there, it's very important. And I think that there, as you said, there are some other things out there like criminal justice reform and talking about that sort of stuff, mandatory minimum sentencing laws, and having all of those things in our back pocket to talk about poverty and to address the fact that like the chat is saying, that there are many, many, many different stripes of conservatives out there, and not all of them fit in the top 1% tax bracket. So these are issues that we do care about passionately, and these are some of the reasons why we want to have a booming economy. We want to have, it's not the top 1% that we're caring about. It's everybody. We want everybody to succeed. So it's not just us trying to be elitist and root for Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. That's not even our team, really.
Well, and the fact is that the people at the tippy top of the economic ladder are liberals all across the board. And in the last 6 years or 8 years, because the Democrats took over Congress 2 years before Obama, the income disparity, or the income inequality, or whatever, the top 1% has gotten, the really rich have gotten super mega ultra rich because of liberal progressive policies. And the middle class has, and the poor have actually gotten richer a little bit, and it's the middle class that has sucked it up. And it's the middle class that conservatives and the Republicans really do represent more than anybody else these days. We don't represent unions. We represent the union workers. We don't represent the union executives because they're in the 1% these days. We don't represent the education administrators because they're the top level union 1%ers. We represent teachers, and we want the best for them. We want them to survive and have well-funded pension programs, and to have jobs in schools that are not closing down. We want them to have students who are awake and alert in class and able to learn the material that the teacher wants to present, because we want children to learn and grow and invent and develop and open businesses and create a prosperous America in the future. And yes, the whole thing is, we hate the poor because we don't want them to be poor anymore. We don't hate the poor people. We hate poverty. We want people to work themselves out of poverty. We want there to be fewer poor people. And we understand that you don't make people less poor by giving them money. You make people less poor by giving them a job, or giving them an opportunity to have a job, because people work their way out of poverty. You don't get handouts your way out of poverty. You don't get a check to get out of poverty. You get a job to get out of poverty.
Yeah, I always like to ask people, look, two questions. First of all, how do you run your family? Do you run it on a merit system? Do you reward your kids more when they do better, or do you punish them more when they do better? You reward them more when they do better because that makes them stronger. That teaches them to do better. You want your kids to be stronger, not weaker. So my second question is, do you want a political party whose programs, forget their message, forget either party's message, but whose programs say, we want you to be more dependent on us so we can have your votes? Or do you want a political party that says, we want an opportunity for you so you are more dependent on you and you can vote for whoever you please? Beware the person who wants you to need them.
Fishy, you raise a really, a good point in the chat here. Corruption and progressive policy is killing the poor. It's the same thing. It's just disgusting the way these things are culminating.
You look no further than the Democratic frontrunner for president. After her husband left office, she claims they were dead broke. That was a lie.
She's not just the front runner; she's also the middle of the pack.
Yeah, she's
the trailing runner.
For this week. This is the last week.
They'll have an open communist next week.
Socialist. Bernie's a
socialist. He's a socialist. Yeah.
Bernie Sanders.
Don't confuse the two.
Step on the way to communism. It's the same thing.
They're totally.
The definition is the step on the way to communism in between democracy and communism, so they're the same thing. But, I mean, look no further than her. They are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Their charity is just a big Ponzi scheme. It gives, 5% of their $140 million to charity? It's just Ponzi
They
scheme.
spend more on office supplies.
That brings up something. How often do we criticize our charities for how little ends up in the hands of the beneficiaries that it's intended for? Have we made that same calculation about government giving?
Oh, I like that. We need a charity navigator for the welfare department or for the people.
Do you mean the government's giving to Hillary Clinton for favors?
Yeah.
Or are you talking about a different kind of government giving?
I'm talking about money we give to the government, our government giving.
Oh, so not those governments that stone gays and kill women trying to get her to influence policy and giving her tens of millions of dollars.
Right. That's just standard corruption. Oh, everybody does that. Everybody does that.
Hey, you can't prove any of that. You can't connect the dots. She erased them all.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? There's no proof. Well, the proof would have been on the emails, but
no. Oh, convenient. Oh my goodness.
It's so funny. Her backyard has pieces of arms and legs sticking up all over in the backyard, but she says, "You can't find the bodies." For crying out loud. I erased them all. Unbelievable. I got to pick and choose what emails I would release, and then I erased. I absolutely cleansed my hard drive because people do that all the time. Who does that? Nobody anywhere does that.
But there's
all those emails that were about planning my daughter's wedding and all this stuff about her firstborn child. I deleted all of that.
Well,
because all of those pictures and stuff, that's just personal stuff. Nobody keeps that.
You wouldn't want anybody to know that you planned your daughter's wedding. I mean, that's. But anyway, I mean, getting back to it, look, they got unbelievable millions and millions and millions of dollars go to their, for political perks so that they could help other businesses make far more millions in big contracts in all these poor countries. We conservatives, when we help the poor, we do it with our own money, and there are no strings attached. Generally, we're almost always along those lines. This is crazy.
Or we invest and open up a business in those nations and provide factories that they can work in, and that's even better than just donating to a charity. The things that Bill Gates has done via his company have helped far more people get out of poverty than anything his charity is doing. Because the charity is a one-off, it's going to hand you some cash. But opening up a factory that produces the CDs for Windows 95 and sends them out, that elevated an awful lot of Chinese people that allowed an awful lot of Chinese people to move out of the fields and move into the cities and get jobs and get education, and now they have other jobs at other factories where they're working and they're making money, and they're in the capitalist free market system in China. That's way better than this is way back a million years ago when people used to make CDs and put them in boxes and shrink wrap it with cellophane. This is way before your time, back in the olden times.
I see.
Windows 95 and stuff.
In fact, I used Windows 95. I've been there. That is not beyond the scope of my.
There were a bunch of Chinese factories to make all those AOL coasters that we all got in the mail.
Right. And we're talking about poor in other countries, and we think about that stuff, and we think about the giving that we. I want to go back to the sort of. What is it? The charity navigator? Is that what you said, Leslie? Is that what it's called?
Yes, that's what it is. Charity navigator, and they evaluate charities, and they have problems, and they're not perfect, and the evaluation that they use isn't always accurate. You have to look deeper into it because they came up with things that some of the Wounded Warrior Foundation rated low because of
Yeah.
this, that, and the other of the way they're measuring things. But it is a good place to start.
Right, and I actually saw some of those sites in various articles about the Clinton situation. But I do think, I mean, going back to the idea of having one of those things for government-funded projects and for following the money, I mean, it just seems like it would make so much sense to do something like that. And obviously there are things like that, the waste book that gets put out, all of that sort of stuff. But if we actually looked at the way, if we tried to look at who we were helping on a personal level as far as the welfare situation, if we looked at the numbers, if we looked at the numbers in schools, really, I mean, this is something that we've talked about before. I mean, when you're paying $26,000 per student in a classroom or $30,000 per student in a classroom, I mean, is that a good use of your money? And it's not, and you're not getting results in that classroom? Is that a good use of your money? That sort of a thing.
Just
to me,
how much of it actually gets there first?
Exactly. Where does it go to the administrators? Does it go to the teachers? Does it go to, I mean, where is it going? What is this money? Can we follow this money? And it's difficult to do that when you've got such a big monstrous government, such a huge government. It's hard to track where the funds go or how they get to wherever they're supposed to go, and when they don't actually get to where they're supposed to go.
Hey guys, quick question though. How do you guys deal with the left's number one thing though? Their number one argument here. What guarantees are you providing? There are people in need, and you're asking us to rely on the personal, privately chosen act of charity without a safety net. What are you providing?
There's always going to be people in poverty. I know that's not something people want to hear. That might not be the best choice. Jesus said it in the Bible, though. There's always going to be poor among you. And the way I would say it, honestly, is look at the major Democrat-controlled cities. Look how their poverty has grown. Look how many people are struggling. Look at the boarded-up buildings of Detroit. Look how the population that could afford it has fled out of Detroit. And clearly what you've done over the past 60 years has not worked. It's made everything worse. So what harm is there in trying something else? I mean, really, could it be? Look at how good capitalism has done for the world. Look how bad socialism has done for these cities. Let's try capitalism in a couple of those cities. Let's vote for the R instead of the D for 4 years. Let's see what will happen. Let's lower taxes, encourages business to come for 4 years, and let's see what will happen. We can keep the welfare in place at first, but let's encourage businesses to come in, things like that. Let's maybe encourage a work program. I read somewhere today that some city encouraged, like, you had to have work to have welfare, and it's dropped drastically. Unfortunately, I can't remember the article. Start incrementally on some things like that, but what you've been doing's failed miserably. It really couldn't get any worse, so let's try something different.
Well, and I don't know that conservatives have a really good answer for that, honestly. Not that they don't give, but when you take, say, a charity, for instance, and you're looking just at the numbers and how much they return, how much of it actually ends up in the hands of people it's intended to help, what you don't figure, and this is something that somebody put in my head a while back, what you don't figure is what it costs to raise money. The government has, huge resources, and they don't have to market the fact that you need to pay your taxes. But a charity needs attention, and it needs a high profile in order to draw numbers in. This is how, say, the Ice Bucket Challenge was so successful for that charity, because they made a thing that caught on and everybody gave because it was the thing to do. You're going to have varying rates. You have to look at other factors in a charity besides just the bottom line of what gets spent at the beneficiary level, because if you had an aggressive marketing budget, you might be able to do better in the long run and grow and serve more people. But we shy away from that. So there's that problem, but there's also conservatives want to be able to choose where to put their money, and the government doesn't want them to be able to do that. And that is a huge factor. The government wants to be able to direct this largesse that they control out of our pockets where they see it doing the most good, and conservatives want to do where they see it doing the most good, the needs they can identify. And so some people, in that great scheme of things, some things that are funded by government would not be funded by private people, obviously, and therefore the government would be very unwilling to let some things like this be passed on to charity because some people are going to be underserved in the manner that the government thinks they should.
One other really quick, my favorite comparison side by side is just to say, look, in the past century, 3 nations were cut in half by war: Germany, Vietnam, and Korea. In each case, one side went more more socialist, and the other side went more free market. In each case, the free market side provided a much better standard of living throughout society, including to the poor.
It's always a good example.
That's very true. And people are running away from Mexico, South America, Africa. They're dying to cross the Mediterranean to get to more capitalism and more free market. So the directionality of going more towards the free market is the right way. And I like, rather than focusing on specific policy prescriptions, which is not anything that any of us can really affect, I like how Ryan brings it down to, when you're discussing with somebody locally, what you can propose for them to do is, hey, let's just try voting Republican. Because that's really the thing that each of us can do, is persuade people in the big cities to try to go, maybe this one particular little city council district, or maybe this one particular school district. Let's try, not because the big cities have been Democrat for 50 years, and you end up with Baltimore. And out in the suburbs, they are more Democrat, and people are wealthier. So we don't know whether it's that wealthier people move to the suburbs and that's why they're wealthy, or out in the suburbs they are Republicans and they become wealthy because they're Republicans. We don't know, but there is correlation. I don't know which way the causation works, but there is correlation. Suburbs are conservative and Republican and wealthier. The inner cities are Democrat and poor. So how about we try making the inner cities Republican and see if maybe the rich follows the Republican?
Well, I heard something interesting. I don't remember if it was on TV or on the radio, but somebody made the point that when you have people who are on welfare, they don't own anything. Not really. They don't own their homes or cars or property of any type. And so because they have no vested interest, they're much more quickly to destroy, which is what we're seeing happen in Baltimore, or wherever, Baltimore, sorry. Whereas in the suburbs, I think you see more home ownership, you see more property ownership, more cars, more jobs, things like that. So people have a more vested interest in those things, and because they've had to earn them, they're more likely to take care of them, take pride in them.
I don't know how much I agree with that. I mean, I get it, and I understand you're more likely to spend somebody else's money than you are to spend your own.
Actually, I know it's true from personal experience. I had a company car for a while at the same time that I had a personal car, and I didn't take care of the company car. I didn't keep it clean. I didn't wash it. I didn't take care of it as much as I took care of my own car, because it was somebody else's responsibility, not my own.
Right, but I feel like when you're talking about the situation in Baltimore, I don't know that that's necessarily comparable in the way that the disrespect that's happening. I feel like it's kind of rationalizing to an extent the behavior. I don't think that I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I just don't feel like.
Well, it wasn't excusing the behavior at all.
No, not excusing. Absolutely not.
Yeah, Well, and I think the bigger point that the person was making is that when you have people who are living on the public dime, and let's take Baltimore out of it completely, when you have people who are living on the public dime, and I mean, look at the projects in Chicago. Those are not, I mean, the plumbing is destroyed, the housing is just in ruins. Why? It's because of what Leslie just said. They don't have to take care of it. They didn't have to pay for it. They don't have to maintain it. So they don't have any respect for it. They don't care about it.
Well, and that goes for rental property that people have in the suburbs. I mean, it's just a thing.
Right, but my point is...
Totally true. I hate living across the street from rental property. Ugh.
We've got rental properties in our neighborhood that have the same problem, but the point I'm trying to make is that when you have a concentrated population of people who do not own any property, then that's where you see more poverty, and it continues to snowball on itself. I think in the suburbs you have a bigger mix. You have people who rent, but you also have more people who own, people who are not on welfare, and so because of that, you see a different standard of behavior.
But don't forget, there was a whole bunch of, from the middle of the 2000s on, efforts to get people into home ownership, and look how that turned out.
But
well, that's true. They could just walk away from the houses and stuff.
That's a little different, though.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
That was people living outside their means. I'm talking about people who have taken the time to earn their way.
Well, and I think you come up with something like a herd immunity, out in the suburbs where on a given street, 75% of the houses are owned and 25% are rented. That street's going to look a lot better than one where it's 50-50 or even 25-75 the other way, because that 75% of the homeowners are going to kind of pressure, via peer pressure, the 25% of renters to at least keep the front of the house looking good.
Actually,
because they keep up with the Joneses kind of thing.
Yeah, we've seen that happen in our own neighborhood. It was when the market crashed, we had tons of foreclosures and HUD homes because of what you said, Vichy. People got into houses over their head. They couldn't afford them. They got foreclosed. They walked away. But as the neighborhood has had time to recover over the last, 8 years, and people have come in and they've purchased those homes, we've seen our neighborhood completely turn around. And we do still have those houses that don't look so good, but instead of being, half and half, now it's the 75%, 25%.
Yeah, and there's a difference
where you guys are...
ownership and earned ownership. I mean, when you are given loans that are for ludicrously higher amounts than you can afford because they are government insured, and meaning you don't have to pay them back, that's not the same kind of ownership. And certainly, yeah, we've noticed the connection between ownership and pride in property is enormous.
Yeah, but this is what the government was pushing it for. Ostensibly, the surface was so that more people have ownership and property, and they have the ability to amass wealth, and et cetera. And what it was doing was, throwing a bunch of money into housing, a crony transfer into housing industry until that couldn't be sustained.
So yeah, government understands the principle, but the government created a program and executed it abominably. That's no surprise. But so it does reinforce the principle that ownership is best, and we see it in poor communities when they come up with, let's all get together and have this community garden. There's something that the people in the community they worked for, they built it themselves, and it's something that they feel proud of, or they all get together and they build the playground, and those kinds of projects can turn the community around because the people who live there have something that is theirs, that they worked towards and they had that effort in creating.
Okay, I think you guys have a point. I think there definitely is something to ownership, but I think there's also, I agree with JD, there's a lot of other factors to it, or at least a respect factor. And where I'm coming from on this is I lived in Finland for 2 years, and Finland's held up as kind of the ideal European socialist democracy. They have very little ownership. If they own things, it's a really old bike or a really old car or a tiny apartment. There's not really much to take pride in, but they...
Really? I had no idea.
Yeah.
They don't own their houses and stuff?
Well, there are some houses, but the majority of people live in a 3 to 500 square foot apartment. I saw plenty of apartments where the bed doubled as the kitchen table and couch, and you could sit on your bed and wash your hands at the kitchen sink and pull out your stove and sit on the toilet and shower at the same time, and that's kind of how it is.
Wow.
In a lot of places. There were some people with houses, a 2,000 square foot house kind of thing, but there's, if a family has a car, that's a pretty good thing. If it's built in this decade, that's pretty incredible,
Wow.
But they still had pride. They still took care of things. They still were respectful. They'll still help one another. They'll clean up the streets. They won't leave their trash around. And the things you see in the American inner cities or even in normal places that I didn't see there. I actually read an article about it today that was kind of interesting, where they'll leave their kids outside just at the park, and there's someone there that'll just kind of watch kids. They leave the school doors open, no metal detectors, no locks. Kids can come and go as they please. But there's that nationwide respect for things and people that you treat things like you should. And it has nothing to do in that country with ownership or taking care of your own things, but it's a respect that we don't have here. Yeah, I think Fishy has a great point. It's all people from the same background, same culture. They don't really like outsiders very much in a lot of the cases.
That's no different from our inner cities.
Yeah, so I think that's the point. I think that's part of it. America and American TV and culture is getting more and more there, but when I was there 10 years ago, they had 2 government-run TV channels, and so it's not like they have the MTV like we have. They don't get to see that and follow that. I don't know. It's gotten different, and the younger generation is definitely less respectful, but it's a lot of kind of your old school American Southern respect your elders, yes ma'am, no sir, that type of thing in a lot of cases. And I think it's due to just kind of being alone, being separate from the world. They're the only people that speak the language. I think there's a lot of that type of stuff. Finland makes awesome chocolate, Fishy. Yeah, IKEA's Swedish, not finished. They make some pretty cool hunting knives, and Itala blown glass, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, not a whole lot of exports.
I'm wondering about that import thing in terms of chocolate, because if they can't import it, there's been different formulas for importation on chocolate based on, whether you can get the Cadbury with this thing or that thing. If they can't get me the chocolate, I don't care about Finland. I'm just saying.
Using Wikipedia as the greatest source of information in the world, but I know we don't like to trust Wikipedia as a primary source, but it is a quick way to get quick overview information. And, of course, I looked up Finland. They only have like 5 million people there, so it's fairly small. And of the 3, Norway and Norway, Sweden, and Finland, it's the one that's on the furthest east. It's the one that's attached to Russia. So for those of you looking for your geography lesson. But it says Finland was a relative latecomer to industrialization, remaining a largely agrarian country until the 1950s. Thereafter, it rapidly developed an advanced economy while building an extensive Nordic-style welfare state, resulting in widespread prosperity and one of the highest per capita incomes in the world. So maybe some of it has to do with the fact that they kind of skipped over the industrialization process and the way that they go from having an agrarian nation and the way that that's very family-oriented and very nuclear family, and then they went, boom, into this Nordic-style welfare state, and they're all very rich. I mean, they kind of it sounds to me like, just making some leaps here, they leapfrogged over some of the things that made the rest of us be all a bunch of haters and mean people.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I wonder if that had something to do with that.
I was going to say, speaking of haters and mean people, and stuff that we've been accused of, and lots of people have been accused of in the past couple of days. I want to transition to the last story that we have on the docket for the night, and it's something that, I mean, obviously we haven't talked about it too much, but we mentioned it briefly before, and it's a huge story now. In the past couple of days, it's erupted in Baltimore. You know, there's another person who was in police custody and died. Freddie Gray, of some spinal trauma. There's lots of stuff, investigations as to how it happened, what happened, all of that stuff. But what we can say is that Baltimore is not in a good place right now. There's just been a lot of unrest. And Fishy, I know you watched it all last night.
Yeah, we have to start by saying Baltimore is not Ferguson. They're
absolutely not.
Completely different in the events, the community, the type of things that you're seeing. But some things are the same. While you're seeing property damage in Baltimore, it's not localized. It's being spread out in very different places. You'll find pockets all over that are having issues, or at least have had issues. There were quite a few arrests. Some of them young people, like somewhere like 15 young people were arrested, and I say young people, I mean minors. Part of the was being let out of school. And again, you have a difference in city management. It is run by a black mayor. The chief of police, if I'm not mistaken, is black. You have a chiefly black population in the city. It's a whole different set of circumstances, and I don't want people to be rolling their eyes and saying, "Here we go again with the same sort of things that you're seeing." People should read news accounts skeptically and carefully. And the reason I say read news accounts carefully and skeptically, I've been monitoring Twitter from journalists as well as people in minority communities around the country that have been responding to this. And the amount of misinformation that gets spread during an event like this is it's incredible how much. And there's a lack of desire to wait for things like an investigation to take place. People are pressing for action ahead of facts on any kind of side. And you can see things misinterpreted in the media, that you could see a picture and look at it one way, and then someone tries to tell you it's something else completely different happening. I think JD has a story about that was really indicative of what the media, or some in the media, have done to take this from reporting to extreme advocacy.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been lots of different crazy stories that have been out there, but and I've just recently seen another one in the same vein. But Salon has been out there, and they actually put out an article that says Baltimore's violent protesters are right. Smashing police cars is a legitimate political strategy. This is they are actually saying that these looters and the people who are actually committing violent acts and are are not retaliating, but are instigating violence against the police are in the right. And I believe Vox also had a piece out that was in a similar vein. It's amazing the kind of advocacy that the media is doing. In this case, there's actually another one from the Baltimore local paper about some of the stuff that happened. Just biased coverage and trying to give cover to a lot of the bad acts that were happening in Baltimore. And the reason why I actually bring these up, and one of the reasons why it was so amazing to me to read about these stories is I saw the Salon story earlier when you actually tweeted about it, Fishy, but that was not the last time I saw it. The last time I saw it was on Reddit in a Gamergate group, actually, surprisingly enough. And I know that we haven't talked a whole lot about Gamergate here, and I'm not going to, but suffice it to say, it's it was created as a reaction to the discovery of serious bias, liberal bias, and progressive bias, and social justice bias in the gaming journalism sector, and there was lots of impropriety and stuff. Anyway, what it has done is as it has sort of generated a skepticism of the media, of media in general, and this article was posted to Kotaku in Action, which is the Gamergate headquarters on Reddit, and the amount of response is really heartening to me. It was all day long. It was one of the top topics on Kotaku in Action, and this is interesting because it's off topic. It's not something that has anything to do with games, video games, or the stuff that they normally cover. It is just it has bloomed from a skepticism of games journalism to seeing that there's this kind of liberal influence and this progressive influence and cover going towards things where factually this stuff makes no sense. And it was really interesting for me to see that. I actually one of the really great quotes from the thread that I took a picture of it and I posted it on Facebook was a discussion that they had in the thread about the tactics and the sort of ends justify the means of the situation for these journalists. Let me just grab it right here. It's amazing to me to see this kind of response to Salon. The only thing that matters about a strategy is if it works. It's not as if there's anything inherently wrong about arson, murder, torture, stuff like that. No. At this point, it's pure BS. They don't believe what they're saying. Not that they believe the opposite either. They are just indifferent to what positions they should spout as long as it brings in clicks. For the world, they don't believe in anything. For themselves, they believe in profit, notoriety. And then the next guy brings up, you laugh, but the philosophy of moral relativism says just that. No bad tactics, only bad targets. And just this sort of response is amazing, and I would love to hear what you guys think about it. But to me,
so are people starting to wake up to clickbait?
Don't know anything. I'm sorry?
Are people starting to wake up to, well, just wake up and see through some of this clickbait and moral relativism and see it for the evil that it is, do you think? Is there reason to be optimistic?
Yes, it is a reason to be optimistic, and that's what's happening here in this particular example. Fishy, you wanna talk about the Speako, and because it goes on both sides here. There's some other stuff, just the way that that Salon has reacted. There's also been some other I don't know, context issues that are less than great.
Well, I wanted to get on this one story. The interesting thing to underline here is people in the Gamergate, the gamer community, recognized media malpractice when it was applied to them, and they understood that fully. And what's happening here is that now that they've been the victim of this, they are able to transfer that knowledge into skepticism of other things. And that's huge, and we need to spend a lot of effort boosting people that are attacked by the social justice warriors for this reason, because I think communities like that, like the gamer community, are not the only ones that they're going to go after. The left is determined to police people. You saw some of this, people cheering Bruce Jenner going on television until he said he came out as a Republican and a Christian.
Right, I think people are going to see that and go, hold on, wait a minute. Maybe these Republicans who are constantly complaining, that seems so real. They seem right. Huh.
Yes, and so we need to build that and expose that as often as possible, talk about it as often as possible. Now, that said, again, the media had a hard time trying to keep track of all the events that were going on. You could watch media from behind the desk covering Baltimore. You could watch media on the street covering Baltimore, and you could find embedded people like Timcast, Tim Pool out there in the actual neighborhoods with people. You could watch any number of ways, but when it came to official statements, everybody had the official statement from the mayor, and the mayor had said that we were wanting to give the protesters space to express themselves, and then she got pummeled for saying that they gave space to people who wanted to destroy things. And almost to a man on conservative Twitter and Facebook, people took that quote, blew it up, and said that their intention was to allow people to destroy things. And I never, from the first moment I heard it, read it that way. And I want people to just take a moment.
So I'm not the only one.
Right. And I will say that Charlie Cook agrees with us too. So,
of course.
Yes.
Cool. But Ace disagrees, so.
Well, love you, Ace, but you're wrong.
But you're wrong. Charlie's right.
You're wrong. The point of the statement was, and this is how she should have said it, we attempted to make as much room as possible for people who wanted to express their First Amendment rights and have their protest rights respected. Unfortunately, what happened in the doing so is that we also made room inadvertently for people to destroy things.
And she even said it that way. She said, while A, also B. And it was pretty obvious to me that what I was hearing is, while we were trying to do A, which is a good thing, also B happened, which was a bad thing and not part of what we intended. It was very clear that was what she meant.
But what happened is the right has used this, conservative Twitter, and they've used it as a weapon to beat her with, and I think it's unjust. And when we do that, we undermine ourselves. We undermine ourselves horribly when we do that. So shame on all the people who jumped on that and decided that was the story and didn't give her the benefit of the doubt, because if a conservative had got out and said that, and the media would have jumped up in arms about it, and you would have said, that's not what they meant.
That's so unfair. That's not what she meant. We would have been whining about it. Yeah. And granted, we did talk, I guess it was last week, about how the left will pick up anything that even resembles or could slightly even be used as a weapon, turn it into a weapon, and use it against us, and that's a tactic that we need to figure out and use. And that's what people did. The people on the right picked up something that resembled, could be twisted to use as a weapon against her, and they used it against her. But the problem is they're using it as a weapon to show that the mayor is inept. Who cares? That was going to be really obvious from the beginning, and that's not the point.
So what? You needed help to know that?
No, because that's not a weapon that helps anything other than to say that the mayor is inept. It doesn't tell any larger story that the Democrats are on purpose creating a safe space for rioters to riot, because that's self-evidently untrue. And it's one of those things where I can look at it and I can see, okay, conservatives are trying to use a left tactic, so I appreciate the effort, but badly executed, really badly executed. And I'm glad you said that. I was so afraid when I saw on our backdoor chat where you wanted to talk about the mayor's speako. I'm going, oh God, because we hadn't talked about this before. And I'm like, oh God, I'm going to be the only one that disagrees, and I'm going to have to disagree with everybody on the podcast with me, and this is going to be uncomfortable, and I'm not going to like it. And maybe I should just be quiet. And then
Don't
you started.
worry, Leslie.
Like,
we're going to
have.
Don't worry, Leslie. The comment section is going to be there, so you'll get that. I'm sure soon. Ryan, you want to talk about Baltimore a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say, it's been really alarming to me, the disconnect I've seen between the two sides on this. On the conservative side, I see a lot of people getting mad at the rioters, making fun of them, things like that. On the rioter side, or on the minority side, or the liberal side, seeing a lot of people really upset with police brutality. They feel like they're being targeted. I just want to say that I understand that you feel like you're being targeted. I agree. It seems that way. Police are becoming much too militarized. There's way too many instances of police brutality, and we need to do something about it immediately. If you want to follow the lead of Martin Luther King and people like him, have peaceful marches, peaceful protests, speak-ins, I'll be there right alongside you, arm in arm. If you want to have social media activism, if you want to bring these things to people's attention, I'll be there with you. If you want to go into rioting, looting, burning, killing, beating, that's not going to do any good. It's just going to inflame more racial tension. It's going to make the police more up in arms, more on guard and fearful for their lives, and then they'll in turn treat you worse. And I'm not going to be there to support you on that. I think the way this needs to change is we get together and we need to have good discussions of what we need to do, how we stop the militarization of police. Why do they have armored personnel carriers? They should all be sent back immediately. I can't think of a real reason why. Do they really need to come out in full riot gear all the time? Probably not. I think we need to change the protocols. The policemen who've done these acts, strangling the man in New York, shooting the man, I think, somewhere in South or North Carolina a few weeks ago in the back, this incident in Baltimore, these cops need to be tried just like any normal person would be. They shouldn't get any special privilege. They should probably be held to an even higher standard. I support that. I'm with you on that. And I think most conservatives would be as well. I think this is a bad enough issue throughout the country, and both sides are worried enough about it. This is something we can and should work together on, but we need to do it in a peaceful way. If we use violence, it's not going to work. It's just going to make things worse. So, that's all I wanted to say, is just to all the people who feel like they're being attacked, who feel that police are too brutal or unfair, I'm with you. But we need to do it the smart way.
I 100% agree with everything you just said. Everybody else want to chime in? They're all muted.
I think you got it. I think Ryan got it there. I think that there are reasons to have some militarized police, but not all day, every day, not all the time. Not something that you can get done in 2.5 seconds. Have a centralized location. If you need to have the state police guys come in and take care of a really, really bad situation, great. But we've certainly talked about that a lot.
Yeah, and it's like with so many issues, it's not 0 or 100. It's somewhere in the 50 range. And with the over militarization of police and the police brutality, that needs to be drawn way back, because there are very real instances of police brutality, and there are very real instances of police administrative support for brutal cops, and there is a problem, and it needs to be addressed. It's not as bad as some people say. It's not as nothing as other people say. It does exist, and it does need to be solved. But rioting and looting is the most counterproductive way to achieve your goals.
Well, and I think everybody, obviously categorically on our side would agree with that. But what we can take away from this is that where we have openings like the militarization of police, where we have questions about the justice system and how it works for different people, that we need to be better informed and educated about it so that we can talk to people. We're not going to be able to reach people who are intent on destroying things to destroy. But there are people in those threads that I watch and in those feeds that I watch who are reachable and with whom you can have a conversation and with whom you can find common cause on the fact that some things need to change, and they need to change pretty rapidly, and there needs to be reform. And you can have those conversations, and then who knows down the line how many more opportunities you'll have to talk to that person, because you didn't just greet them with a meme that made fun or insulted or downplayed what they're feeling.
Right. And one of the things that I saw later this evening is a a quote from Mike Rowe, who is always beneficial in these kinds of instances. Look for the helpers. In any instance, in an instance like the devastation in Nepal, where the videos and the pictures that you're seeing are just absolutely horrible, there are helpers in that picture, maybe in the background, because maybe the news wants, if it bleeds, it leads, and the news wants the fires. But in every situation, in Ferguson, in Baltimore, there are helpers there. In Baltimore, the looters and the rioters were there last night, but when the sun rose this morning, the helpers were there, and they brought their brooms, and there were people who came out to take pictures and realized, instead of taking pictures, I really need to be helping, and so she put away her camera and she got a broom. And that's what we need to focus on. Those are the people we need to lift up and make stars of those people and highlight those people and build them up and expand the universe that they work in, and understand that the criminal element has always been amongst us, and they are going to take the opportunities that they make, and that's going to be hideous, and the media is always going to shine a spotlight on them because they are interesting and weird and unusual and abnormal and aberrations, and they are news. The vast majority of people who are out in the morning sweeping up and helping to defend a place or putting up plywood, those are the people we need to focus on, and that we need to make sure that they understand we're on their side. We disagree with police brutality. We disagree with criminals destroying your store. Let's just move on and work together to fix both problems. And I think we can get there with some people. As you said, Felicia, there's always going to be that element that you can't reach, and don't waste your time with them. That's going to be 5 or 10% of the crazies on that side, and there's 5 or 10% of crazies on our side that we don't deal with either. It's the vast majority of people in the middle that matter, and we've run way over time. Were there topics? There are a couple of fascinating topics that we were hoping to get to today, but we're going to have to push those to next week. We want to talk about Colorado, and we want to talk some small talk, and we're going to do that next week. We'll just push those topics over till next week, and we will sign off for the day. Is everybody all right with that? Yes? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching us live and chatting with us live. I wasn't even in the chat room today, but I'm going to trust that there were some people in the chat room that were talking about stuff, probably talking about me behind my back, because I am the most fascinating topic. Right? Oh my God, we just lost all of our viewers.
The most interesting redhead in the world.
I am the most interesting cartoon redhead in the world. And I really am a real person. I just don't have a video camera. I run its internet connection thing. Anyway, we will be back next week, and it'll be May by the time we show up next week. It'll be 1/3 of the way through the year. Oh my God, already? And maybe by then we'll have another presidential candidate or two, maybe even a Democrat presidential candidate to talk about other than Queen Hillary. So we will see you guys next Tuesday at 8:45 Central. Be there or be square. And I'm trying to find where my mouse went so that I can stop the broadcast. My computer is, there it is. Okay, there's the mouse. Okay, thank you guys. Appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Bye.